Hello and welcome back to Siggy Tube. Now today we're in some rather grandiose surroundings of tubers in Exeter. And if you don't know what Tubers is, please check out their website tubers.uk, and it's a training academy for youngsters that are learning how to make videos and content for YouTube. Absolutely brilliant place. Now today's video is all about bands, okay? So I wanted to talk very briefly about some of my experiences and frustrations, I guess, with being involved in bands over the years. And I started off with my first band when I was just a teenager. I think I was about 14, 15. And then I've been in bands ever since. But there are a few things that I've learned that I want to pass on that could really help out. Now, the first thing to say is that most bands have got a shelf life, and that shelf life tends to be how long you get on with each other before you fall out and start fighting. So why is that? Mainly because of ego, okay? And it's usually the ego that destroys everything. So when you're starting off with an original band, you're going to be influenced by someone, possibly another band, possibly other artists. But it's really important that you have some kind of vision of what it is you're going to try and do. Now that vision needs to be more than just the music. When you think about bands, it's not just the actual music that people are buying into. It's the whole look of the band. It's the vibe that people get from it. And that really has to be a collective whole. How you get to that point, of course, isn't going to be overnight. So it's really important that you've got this kind of staggered approach of, right, so what we're going to do first. Are we going to learn some songs? Are we going to learn some cover versions? And that's usually the first point that people fall out. Okay, what cover versions are we going to do? And of course, the biggest mistake that people do is that they pick songs they like. And that really is the first point that everyone falls out. Well, I don't like this song. Oh, I like that song. I like that song. I like that song. And before you know it, then you've fallen out with each other in the first go. So what kind of songs do you pick? Well, they have to be something that are going to accompany what your vision is, whether that's going to give a certain vibe or whether that's going to be the certain type of venue you want to play at. Now, any band needs some kind of venue to play. So when you're starting out, you really need to have that in mind. If you live in a town that's only got 2 venues and you're a metal act and those 2 venues don't have metal music, then you're going to have to travel somewhere to play your music, in which case you've got to do research of where it is you're going to go and how you're going to get involved in that. Okay? I think so many bands expect people to come to them and knock on their door. It doesn't work like that, and especially these days, it's not going to work like that at all. You know, everyone is expecting to have some kind of Facebook following. Everyone is probably going to have some kind of demos, some kind of video footage, and so on. But even with that, you've got to have the opportunity to play. People will be horrified when you start to talk about why do bands get employed to play at a place, to sell beer primarily. That's a band's role. So how does that fall into the grand scheme of becoming the next Muse or the next whoever it might be? Well, of course, that's one of the big problems in why people start falling out. Because the vision of what you've got is going to have to follow a certain amount of time. So those covers that you are picking, you've got to see them as being some kind of pull-in for the public. And only bit by bit will people start to like what you're going to do. Now, how do you put aside all of those ego problems? Well, you've got to share roles. You've got to share responsibilities. You know, if you're the main songwriter, do you let other people have a go at songwriting? Do they want to? If you're the drummer, do you turn around and say, well, I'm the drummer, I look after the drums? I've been in lots of bands where there's been lots of disputes about parts, And that's because the person who's playing the part, be the drummer, bass player, guitarist, whatever, gets really territorial about it. And, well, I know what I should be playing because I'm the drummer. Well, if you're a musician and you see the bigger picture with loads and loads of different instruments, then you're going to have ideas as well as the drummer, and so on. So it becomes very difficult for everyone to get their own way. Impossible for people to get their own way. So what you have to do is give the opportunities for people to have their own way on a particular track, and then give your energy to that track just as much as you would expect others to give their energy on a track that you might be working on. Without that, you are not going to get anywhere as a band. The only other way that you're going to be able to function as a band is if you pay other people to play the things that you want them to. Now, most people aren't going to be in a situation where they can pay people to come and play when they start out. So this is really important. You've got to understand that everybody needs to be able to express themselves, and everyone needs to do their own amount towards actually getting that band going. Now that becomes one of the other sticking points of what's fair. So, for instance, many of the bands I've been in, people would always expect the singer to write the lyrics for some unknown reason. I don't know why that is. If you look at Neil Peart from Rush, he was the guy that wrote most of the lyrics for Rush. So why is it that the singer should be writing all the lyrics? Why not everybody have a go? Bring some things in. And if you're a singer that likes to be territorial about it, then perhaps you need to consider giving someone else the chance to bring some of their ideas to the table. When it comes to doing all the social media types of things, do you know how to do video editing? Do you know how to create posters? Are you going to be the person that rings up pubs, rings up a club, promoter and so on, or are you expecting someone else to do it? Now, I've just come out of a band where that very thing happened. 4 months of only maybe a couple of people that were doing anything towards moving that forward, and it won't work. No band is going to last for very long if the responsibility is falling on just one person's shoulders. Everyone's got to roll their sleeves up and get mucky, basically. And that means loading the stuff in to the venue, being involved in the sound check, doing all those things. For many years, I've been the guy that's done sound in bands, and people will turn around and say, well, you like doing that, don't you? And I'm like, well, do I? You're assuming I like doing it, but I'm just doing it because no one else is. And that becomes another part. You know, this idea of not respecting each other in bands is why they fall to bits primarily. So you've got to go back to that original point of why are you doing this? What are you expecting? And you need to review it. If your songs aren't working in a particular way, how do you regard a song as working? Well, how do people react to it when you're actually playing? I don't believe that there's such a thing as a bad audience. I believe that there's the wrong place to play, or there's the wrong type of communication with the audience. Any band that's got some kind of magic will be able to get everybody on side. The perfect example of that would be Oasis. You know, whether you like Oasis or you dislike Oasis, there's no getting away from the fact that Liam could control a crowd and bring you into it, the same way that Freddie Mercury could, or Bono from U2. And that's really, really important, that the dynamic needs to be looked at and refueled all the time. You need those meetings, not just about the music. You need to hang out with each other, but you need to be respectful of each other and share things. And that really is the biggest problem I've come across. You know, who is going to make the first bookings? Who is going to contact the person, make the phone calls, and get all of these things going, you know? You're going to need a website. Can you design a website? Don't turn around and say, oh, I can't design a website. Everyone can design a website now. The real point of doing things is that you're either committed to actually learning how to do it and bring your two benefit in, or you're just expecting someone to do everything for you. And if you're expecting someone to do everything for you, there's no way your band will be successful. Far too many people are expecting to get discovered. And what does that actually mean? Well, it means that someone's actually going to turn up and maybe offer you some gigs and expect you to do certain things. But it isn't going to be that you don't have to work really hard for it. You're going to have to do lots and lots of legwork in whatever way it might be. You know, how are you going to feel the first time that you're in the studio and perhaps the record label say to you, we'd like that song we've written because it doesn't work for what we're trying to do. So you've got to look at these things in many, many different ways. So the one thing and the most important point to bring out of it, vision, learning how to deal with those egos, making sure that you have frank discussions about it, deciding that you've got the balance and making sure you've got the balance of work and creativity, and that everything is working in a way that is fair and heading forward. If you can't tick those boxes, there's no way that that band is going to work. It doesn't matter about the playing side of things if none of those are in place. And interestingly enough, whilst I've talked about bands, I haven't talked about playing, because I don't actually think that the playing side is the main problem of why bands fall out. I think that, you know, if you've got together in the first place, you like the guys that you're playing with, and you can work together. Something that's pulled you all together in the first place. So it becomes a bit like a counselling session, I guess. But how many bands fall to pieces because of it? Again, food for thought. Hopefully some interesting points. See you next time around.